Hi everyone, today I'm sharing my final video for the year, and this one's a really simple whole grain sourdough fermented fruit cake made with mixed dried fruit, milk, freshly milled khorasan flour, but you can use any kind of whole wheat flour, sourdough starter, and some other flavorings. It is so simple and really healthy, but super delicious as well. I hope you enjoy it. This recipe starts off with 500 grams of mixed dried fruit. I just use the fruit mix from the supermarket, but you can use any combination of your favourite dried fruit. It doesn't really matter, just 500 grams. And then I cover that with freshly boiled water and soak it for 30 to 60 minutes. There are lots of ways to make this kind of cake, but I prefer to soak the fruit separately in the beginning and then drain off that water. I think the water helps to get off some of the oil and the sulfates from the dried fruit. Next, I get my flour ready. So in this version of the recipe, I'm using khorasan flour. This is my Egyptian gold grain from 4-leaf milling in South Australia. I love this grain. It makes the most beautiful golden khorasan flour. It's really lovely in cakes and other things. It's great in bread as well. But if you don't have this, that's okay. Just use any kind of whole wheat flour you can get. It could be hard white wheat, some kind of red wheat, I don't know, einkorn, anything you can get your hands on that's kind of wheat related would probably be fine for this recipe. I just mill it as finely as I can in my mock mill, but as I said, you can use, you don't have to mill this yourself. Just buy whatever you can from the supermarket, but get unsifted whole wheat flour if you can. So this is the khorasan flour all milled. You can see it's got that lovely golden colour. That's the actual colour of it. It's really beautiful flour. It's pretty coarse and a bit gritty. It's a really hard grain, the khorasan grain. So that's that poured in, 300 grams of the flour, and then into that I add 500 grams of milk. I just use soy milk, organic whole bean soy milk, because that's what I drink, so I just use that, but you just use any milk that you like. So 500 grams, so that's the same weight as the dried fruit. And then add about half a teaspoon of salt. You could add less if you wanted to, but I think it really helps the flavour. To that I add half a teaspoon of dried orange zest, and then I add half to 1 teaspoon of mixed spice. These ingredients are all optional, but I think they add a lot of nice flavour to the cake. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon there, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I also add a tablespoon of brown sugar. I used Rapadura sugar, but look, that's totally optional too. This cake is quite sweet with all of the fruit in it. And then last but not least, add some of your sourdough starter. There's good old Boris. I'm just putting in about 120, 130 grams, somewhere around there. I don't weigh it. I just put in most of what's in my jar and then feed the leftovers for my next batch. So that goes in. Thank you, Boris. That's my leftover that I'll feed up for my next loaf of bread or my next cake or whatever I'm making. Then I get my beautiful dough whisk that my dad made me. I love that thing. It is so beautiful. And yeah, a dough whisk is really great to mix this batter because you've got that cold starter. I just use cold, old starter from the fridge. I don't pre-feed it or anything, so it's a bit stiff. So a dough whisk or some kind of really stiff spoon is good to mix this through. So I get that main kind of cake batter mixed, and the starter is in there, so all of those ingredients start fermenting a little bit just while I wait for the fruit to finish soaking and also draining. So give that all a really good mix together. It's really nice to make a cake with sourdough. I was so excited. I'd never made this before. I couldn't wait to try it, and it was pretty successful, even the very first one that I made. This is actually the third time that I made it. I made a few tweaks after the first two. You can also add cocoa powder to this to make it chocolatey. That's quite nice. There would be infinitely many variations on this. Just, play around with it. So that's that batter. And don't forget to feed your starter too, to get it ready for your next loaf of bread or whatever you make. I just feed that up and let it kind of activate alongside my dough or whatever I'm making, and then it goes back into the fridge for the next recipe. Now make sure you drain the fruit very, very well. You want the fruit as dry as possible. And once it's drained for like a good 10 minutes, mix it into the rest of the batter. I've just got my dough whisk out again. It's really good for this. And mix that all in. I hope you guys can't hear the birds and the trucks and everything in the background. We've got some tree lopping going on in the park next door. Hope it's not getting into the audio too much. So I just mix up my batter really, really well with my dough whisk, and then I like to scrape down the sides. I'm a bit neat with my bowls and doughs and things. And then once that's all mixed, just leave that batter to ferment for a few hours. I left mine for about 4 hours. It was a pretty warm day. So it's December 2020 and it's quite hot weather where we are. I had the aircon on that day, but it was still reasonably warm in the house. It's probably about 24, 25 degrees Celsius. So you just want to leave the batter till it's risen and it's getting a bit bubbly. And then once it's done that, preheat your oven and get your cake tin ready, because this is pretty much it. The final step is to get a small bowl and mix 4 teaspoons of baking powder and 4 teaspoons of ground flax seeds or ground linseeds. They help to bind the loaf, the cake. Gosh, I don't know what I'm talking about there. I added a couple of extra teaspoons of flour as well. I was a little bit worried that it might be too moist. If the batter is too moist, the cake does get a bit soggy at the bottom. So that's a bit of a balancing act that you'll have to play around with depending on your flour, because they're all going to be different. But really, you just the ground flax seeds and the baking powder are probably the most important thing. It's not going to go too wrong. Mix that in. You want to mix that in right at the last minute, because the baking powder reacts with the acidity of the fermented dough, so the sourdough culture, which is then grown into the cake batter. That's going to react and you're going to get a really nice puffy kind of rise from the cake by adding the baking powder right at the end. So mix that in. I like to just sprinkle it in a bit at a time, just to make sure that I'm not getting a big chunk of it in the dough. Just kind of mix and then sprinkle a bit more, and then mix and then sprinkle a bit more. If you've got a good dough whisk or a really good strong wooden spoon or something like that that you can really mix quite vigorously, then you should be fine. Don't use a wobbly spoon. You need something strong. And that's it. Now we're ready to bake. My oven preheats pretty quickly, but make sure your oven is ready to go before you mix that baking powder in, because you want to do that right at the last minute. Once your batter is all mixed up, get it in the tin. This is just a Pyrex cake tin that I found in an op shop somewhere. Most of my stuff comes from op shops. Oh, it's fun. You find all sorts of good things in there, and it's all for a good cause. So just get your cake batter in the tin and spread it out. You don't have to be too precious about it. Just spread it out a little bit. Give it a tap down, looking good. And then into the oven. So you want to bake this cake for 90 minutes. So that's 1.5 hours at 160 degrees Celsius or 320 Fahrenheit. And after an hour and a half, it is done. It should be perfectly cooked. It should be lovely and golden and getting a little bit brown on the top. You want to make sure that you don't undercook it, or it will be a bit gooey. So it should be lovely and golden, dark golden brown. And if you've greased your tin well, it should pop straight out of the tin as well. I just use baking non-stick spray to grease my tin with, but just use whatever you normally use. And then leave it to cool. I did the skewer test, which I always do with my cakes. If your skewer comes out clean, you know that your cake is done. And here it is. This is a few hours later in the afternoon. The cake is completely cooled. It's just beautiful. I've eaten so much of this stuff in the last week. I'm probably going to turn into a fruit cake. Anyway, it's really delicious, and you can pretty much eat it to your heart's content. It's so healthy. And there it is. It's just lovely. It's really kind of moist and succulent almost, and got a lot of flavour thanks to the spices and the orange zest and the sourdough fermentation of the cake. It's absolutely lovely. So I encourage you to give it a try if you want to. You could soak the fruit in some alcohol if you wanted to make it more of a Christmassy kind of cake. Just play around with it and see how you like it, and add and subtract things as you like. So have fun with it, everybody, and take care for the holidays. I look forward to catching up with you for many more recipes in the new year. Thanks, everyone. Bye.